Yes.
Right? That when we talk about Singapore and the discourse that are happening, they sit in front of their screens and participate and consume all this discourse.
Yes.
Right? So we can't bury our heads under the sand and say that these things on Singapore and Kenyans having discussions with their parents on their on the tables during dinner, it is counterproductive when you try to silence that voice because they are having it anyway.
There are two sides to that. When dissent happens from the government, you either embrace fear or you embrace courage. Menishika, the outcome of both ends purely depends on the house you are brought up in. Menishika. So if you are brought up in a house where there's a lot of fear, then high chance you lean more on that side. But if you're brought up in a house where you're taught to be fearless, then you become fearless. And some parents are actually scared because they might expect their child to be safe, but all of a sudden they have this courageous person out there on the streets. Out there dissenting against the government. And the positioning of the child, the way the child is brought up, plays a huge role in the way they respond to these matters. That is in my own assessment.
Well, the creative basically, in my opinion, they inject humor into the lived experiences we are going through as a society. And that is what we are meant to expound, even whether it is in school or in entertainment. Now, when we see the suppression of that expression of our lived experiences through humor, because it's satire, basically, it is tantamount to political interference, as you're saying. The president would not want the whole country presented by a group of kids coming to tell them what they feel about the state of our nation. That is political interference. But we are dealing with kids here who ought to learn, as you say, some values. Courage, speak truth to power. Because every now and then we'll be telling our kids, you need to be strong. You need to stand against that kid in the neighborhood who bullies you. But then the teacher bullies you, or the principal, or the president bullies you. The principle is the same into trying to shrink your thinking along a certain pattern of compliance that is not necessarily a reflection of your truth that you're living with. Now, take that into a curriculum. We transitioned from extra curriculum to co-curriculum based when you talk about this creativity. We are meant to help our kids to bring out the essence of their capabilities and talents. You have thrived in both academic and extracurricular, which is now co-curriculum. How do we marry the two today, professionally, as you said, within the law, to make sure that we have a balance?
Very good question. I like that question. Some things, when they're actually happening, we don't see the impact. And I'm going to use a good example. And like, a good example is when Eric Wainaina did Daima Kenya. It was more of my love for the country. And he was not even taking positions. But the amount of flack this man got, because it was during the Moi era, it went completely the other side. 15 years later, he's performing at a state event on that same song. So when certain things unfold to a certain generation, and it gets a lot of blockade, it might not make sense there, but 10 years later it might translate. Remember, with the change of free education, do you know how many political books went into literature? There were so many. Aki, there were so many. Even us, I think when I was in high school, the closest of a political book we did was a Man of the People. Other than that, the other books were more storytelling. We only had one political book. If you come 10 years later, during the time when Kibaki was president, they were doing 4 political books. Yani the amount of rewiring of a whole generation has produced a group of teachers that are now teaching this generation. Our own kids may have Gen Alphas. So the teachers being taught were in school during the Moi Kibaki era doing 4 political books.
Yeah.
And so the academic impact, you see how it has trickled into the creative side of them. And now they are saying, this is what I was exposed to when I was in high school. I'm now a teacher. I'm teaching these kids, and I'm translating it creatively out like this. I think that is like a 15-year, a decision that was made 20 years ago. We are feeling it now.
Feeling it now.
Definitely. I mean, and a lot goes back in history. I mean, a lot of people complain that, young men